in Cleveland, Ohio, and I held my mother's gun to my head. And I wanted to blow my brains all over her wall. You must stop to ask the question, why would a 10-year-old boy want to die? That's a time of dreaming to be Superman or a hero of some type. But my life was so dark and so full of despair that I wanted to die. My family is immigrants. My grandmother is from Germany, a little town called Bernkastel-Kues. She's tall and thin and pale, so we called her French fry. My grandfather is from Cuba, big, burly, dark man, and so we called him Hamburger. Hamburger met French fry and created a happy meal. And they had 7 lovely McNuggets. But in Ohio, during that dispensation of time, it wasn't looked upon well for a black man to be married to a white woman. So they hid that from society in most cases. My grandfather had a flaw. He liked to drink overproof Cuban rum from the old country, and every now and again he would boldly take his wife out, and this one particular day, another man that was also inebriated saw my grandfather with this white woman, and he asked my grandmother the question, and he said, "Why would you be a nigger lover?" And my grandfather, who worked in the sugarcane fields, was full of rage and rum, and took his right hand the size of my thigh and hit the man in the jaw and broke his neck. He was convicted and sent to the worst prison in Ohio, Mansfield Reformatory, where he was locked in his cell 23 hours a day. My grandmother, being a German and having tremendous work ethic and pride, began to work cleaning people's houses because when they discovered she was married to this black convict, it hit the newspaper and she lost her job. But she had tremendous value and she worked cleaning people's homes, but then she would have fainting spells and blackout spells. They discovered she had cancer behind her right eye that was metastasizing to her brain. And the doctors told her, "Eleanor, we must take out your eye and a third of your face, and you will never be able to function normally in society again." My friends, we ask, what do you do when the American dream becomes a nightmare? My grandmother was disabled, she could no longer work, and my family lost everything, lost the home that they had purchased, and the car, and their clothing and furniture, and began to live from place to place when the rent became due. Out of these 7 children, my mother was the oldest. At this time, she was 14 years of age. She had 3 brothers. They belonged to a gang called the Devil's Disciples, where they would use heroin, and they were addicted to drugs as young teenagers. And there was a pimp in the community named Larry who would prey upon young, beautiful women. And my mother, who's mulatto, who is half German and half Cuban, just a beautiful radiance of charm and beauty, was asked by Larry. He asked her, "What is school doing for you?" She's 14 years old. He said, "Your mother is dying, your father's in prison, your 3 brothers are on heroin. What is school doing for you?" He said, "You are sitting on a gold mine." She said, "Where?" He said, "You're sitting on it." It's called being turned out. At age 14, my beautiful mother became a call girl, selling her young body to grown men for money. And during that time, as she was selling herself to strangers, she got pregnant. We call it having a trick baby. You're turning a trick, as they say in the business, and now you're pregnant. And the pimp said, "There's no way we can make a living here with you being pregnant." So they tried to get rid of the baby. They gave her alcohol to drink. They threw her downstairs. They put a hanger up her body and poked the baby with holes to try to kill it. The baby was not killed, but he was born premature. with no pancreas, ear, nose, and throat not connected properly, lungs underdeveloped, a learning disability, a bladder too small, basically a trick baby that nobody wanted. And that trick baby was me. I was born to a prostitute when she was 16. I could not read very well. I had no pancreas, had a learning disability, and was a severe stutterer. To make matters worse, my mother had a madam who ran her prostitution house who hated men, and she would babysit me when mom went out to do her business, and she would take a broomstick and put it into a boy's body where it should not go. She would rape me with vicious vitriol. And when you are raped and abused as a young child, there are 4 rules. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, and pretend nothing is happening. So by age 10, I'd had enough. I've been raped repeatedly, shot at. My mother is being beaten by Johns. My uncles are shooting up heroin before me. My grandmother is dying, and my grandfather is in prison, and my father's nowhere around. I heard God was love. I said he missed our house. We were a family of atheists. There was no Bible. There was no prayer. There was no church. There was nothing but despair and death and disease and hate. And there I was trying to blow my brains out, but my mom gun had a safety and I couldn't use it. And the next day I go to school, wetting the bed. I can't control my bladder. It's too small. And I can't talk. So what do? They put me in a boiler room where I would finger paint all day. And there was a teacher. Her name was Mrs. Spears, Christian woman who had a Gideon Bible. And she would volunteer to work with the least of these. She saw her school as a mission field, and she came to see me, and she brought me a Bible that I had never seen before in my entire life and dared not read, and read me Jeremiah 29:11. And God says, I know the plans I have for you, to prosper you and not to harm you, and offer you a hope and a future. She became my speech pathologist and made me read the Bible every day, not knowing that she could get fired, that I didn't know. She risked her job. She risked her security to share the word of God that someone gave her Gideon Bible, and she gave it to me. And I read it and had the audacity to believe when it says that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If God be for me, who can be against me? Things that seem impossible with men are possible with God. How can a young man keep his way clean? By taking heed according to thy word. Thy word have I hid in my heart that I may not sin against thee. She led me to Christ. I went home. I began to preach the word as a young boy to my parents and family and friends, and began to have meetings on the porch with the same Gideon Bible, and began to share the word with my mother, and became a pastor. And Mrs. Spears was there when I baptized my mother and baptized my grandmother, and one by one the prostitutes became businessmen and businesswomen and evangelists and missionaries. Now we have halfway houses, and now the same boy who could not speak and wet the bed and was abused and raped because of one Gideon Bible and one faithful teacher now oversees 25 churches around the world, have served 3 U.S. presidents, wrote 5 best-selling books. And I will tell you, yes, I was born a trick baby, but the trick was on the devil, because somebody gave me the word of God. And so now we teach people who are like us. My family is involved in missionary work, and we help other young families that were like ours to understand everything you've gone through in life is a down payment on your destiny. God will turn your pain into power, your wounds into wisdom, your scars into stars, your stumbling blocks into stepping stones, and your failure into fortune, if you simply understand that it's not just a good book, it's not just pedantic nomenclature and academic academic jargon, it is the living Word of God. And when you put it inside of a child and inside of a prostitute, inside of a drug addict, something begins to happen. Jeremiah said it's like fire shut up in my bones. And now the boy that can't talk can't shut up about Jesus Christ and the power of the Word of God. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for sharing the Word of God. Thank you for caring enough to understand the power that this Word can produce. You don't just change one life, you change generation after generation after generation. At 10, I had the gun in my head. At 10, my son was on Air Force One with President Bush taking the Word of God to Africa. Gideons, God bless you.